Let's take a look at this. I'm going to open up in my text editor, and at the very top, the first line says rewrite engine on. And what this does is turn on the mod rewrite engine, which is what's responsible in Apache for changing the URL. These next two lines start with rewrite cond, which is short for condition, so two rewrite conditions, which are basically like an if statement. These have to pass in order for this final rewrite rule to apply. And this rewrite rule is where we take the existing URL that you see in the browser and that the server is seeing as a request, and we change it to point to something else. So the various characters that you see here may look confusing. A lot of times when it comes to mod rewrite, you're going to end up copying and pasting examples that you find online in order to get something to work. Not everybody will understand exactly what all of these characters mean, but I'll go ahead and explain it just to give you some insight into what's going on here. This first line here is checking to see if the URL that we're requesting actually aligns with an existing file inside of our site. This request file name, wrapped in the curly brackets and starting with the percentage sign, is actually a variable replacement. So in PHP, we use a $sign and then the name of the variable. For mod rewrite, what we're going to do is access the server variable this way. So if the URL is pointing to a file on the server, this will be replaced with the name of that file. This -f is a check to see if this is an actual file. This line down here, which you see is almost identical, has a -d, which is checking to see if it's a directory. And so what we want to make sure before we start rewriting things is that there isn't a file that exists on the site already. For example, if we're trying to get an image from the server, we want to make sure to return the image and not rewrite the URL. We just want to rewrite URLs that are to pages on our site, particularly pages that don't have a file equivalent. So we're going to actually negate this. We're going to say, check to see if this is not a file. If so, let's move on. Check to see that it isn't a directory. If so, let's go ahead and move on. So this exclamation mark is actually a negation, just like we used in PHP in some of the earlier examples. This last line here will actually do the rewriting. In this left part here, we're matching the URL and pulling out some data from the URL in order to be able to use it in our rewriting. This caret character is replaced with everything to the left of the directory that we're currently in. So the site folder that we see, if we go back to the browser here, is actually inside of this learn.php localhost 8082/site. So that caret represents this whole part right here. Now let's jump back to the editor. And this next part, the parentheses with the dot and the asterisk, represent a variable that includes all of the text that appeared to the right of what that caret represents. And this we can use as a variable to rewrite the path by using a $sign and then a number. If we had multiple matches inside of this expression, we could then use the next match with a $2 and the next one with a $3. In this case, we only have one match. And then the $sign marks the end of the URL. Then we have a space, and then we rewrite the URL, and we're rewriting it to point it to index.php. We already saw that file inside of our site folder. A question mark, which is the beginning of the URL query string, path equals, and then we're using our variable. So if we go back to the browser here and we go to the products page and we look at the URL, it's going to say /site/products.php. So what we're actually going to do is grab this products.php and add that as a query string to the end of index.php. So if we go back to the htaccess file here, we'll see it will rewrite it to go to index.php path equals products.php. Now what this means is that we can put anything to the right of that site folder in our URL. It doesn't have to have an extension anymore because we're pointing everything to go to index.php. Now these last two bits right here, the L and the QSA inside of these square brackets, are flags that tell us to do particular things with this rewrite rule. The L means that this is going to be the last rewrite rule that applies. So we can actually stack these rewrite rules. In this case, we just want this one line to apply. So what we're saying is that once this line runs, that we're done with this URL. The second flag, QSA, says that if we have a query string at the end of our URL already, what we're going to do is merge it with this query string here. So if we go back to the browser, and let's say we had a question mark P equals Q, say if we had paginated results on this product page, then that P equals 2 will get added to the query string, and we'll be able to use it in our code, even though it's now being rerouted to the index.php file.